Hello everybody, this is Anthony and this is part one of a multi-part series where we are going to go over how to display data in a web page that is pulled from a Google Sheet using the Google Sheets API. We're going to go over two things in this episode. The first is how to set up your project and to get your API keys set up. And then the second is to create a sheet and then put some dummy data in it and then just run a test against that data to see that we have all of our keys set up properly. So go ahead and start by going to console.developers.google.com/API/dashboard, and then up at the top left you'll see this drop down. You're going to click that drop down and a window will pop up and you'll click the plus sign to create a new project. Once you do that, go ahead and give it a name. I'm calling mine read data. I've already created one, so I'm not going to do it again, but once you create the project, you click create, and then what it'll do is it will show up here as the selected project. If not, it'll always show up in this list here. They'll grow as you add projects. Just select the one that you just created now. From there, we're going to go ahead and get your library set up. So there are lots of libraries to choose from. In this one, we're going to use Google Sheets, and that's just telling our project that we're going to be using Google Sheets API in this project. So you can see Google Sheets showed up, and now I can enable this API. Once I enable it, then the next thing we want to do is to go ahead and set up our credentials. So there's a few pieces that we're going to have to capture and remember for the future episodes. But we'll go ahead and start by clicking credentials here and then create credentials. Go ahead and do help me choose. We'll walk through a quick little wizard here. And it says which API are you using? Well, the only one populated here is Google Sheets because that's the only one that we enabled. So go ahead and select that, and then where will you be calling it from? Well, we are calling it from a web page into the sheet. So from a web browser into a user's sheet. So that's why we select that. And then what credentials do I need? Well, they're telling us that we need this oAuth 2.0 client ID. Next, we're going to give it a name. So to give it a name, you really want to give it the name of the function that you're trying to perform. So in this case, we're going to call it read data. And authorized JavaScript origins, we're going to put the web page that you are going to originate the call from. So in this case, I'm originating from my site, a subdomain of my site. And then authorized redirect URIs is after the user that logs in grants permission to your page, then you want to go ahead and redirect them to the proper page. So that's where this URI comes in. And I'm going to just redirect them back to the same place. You can always change this later, add to it, wherever you want your project to send a user after they've completed the authentication process. That's what wants to go here. Next, we'll create the client ID. You've got your email address there, and then the product name to show to the users. So this is what the user will see when they receive the pop-up that says, please allow this person to access this type of data. We're just going to do read data for this one as well. And then click continue. Alright, so now you have your client ID. So go ahead and copy that and then save that for future use, and then click Done. Alright, the next thing you want to do is you want to get your API key. So under credentials, go to create credentials again, click API key, and then you can see your API key is right here. So we'll talk more about the API key in the future, but you don't want to have this key floating around. This is something that you want to keep protected, and there's also ways that you want to make sure you implement it into your code so that it's not, it can't be compromised. So go ahead and copy that and then save that as well into a text file somewhere for later use. And then click restrict key. So this goes into a little bit about the privacy of the key. So here, I'm going to do HTTP refers for key restriction. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set a refer basically saying I only want individuals from this domain, so anywhere under my site can utilize this key. Anywhere else, they cannot. So that's one way to protect it, but there's also other ways. Alright, so that's been saved. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to our sheet. So hopefully you know how to create a sheet in Google Sheets. So just do File, New, Sheet, and then once you create it, give it a name. Gave mine the name of read data. And then what we'll do is go ahead and just input some dummy data. I've already done that here. So we're just going to do date, name, and phone. You can put whatever you want in here. but for this, I'll just do date, name, and phone. Once you do that, you want to look up in the bar, the address bar above, and you'll see after the final slash here at the beginning, you see D slash, there's this long string. You want to capture that string up to the final slash, and you want to copy that. You don't want to copy the slashes themselves, but the string you're copying is the sheet ID, and that's how Google will know where it's supposed to look for that information. All right, go back to this previous tab here, and then what we're going to do is we're going to run a test against that sheet to ensure that we can actually pull the data from it. So go back to the library that we were at before and click Sheets again, or type Sheets, and click the Google Sheets API. All right, so now you remember the screen, we've already enabled it, but there's a button here that says Try This. So go ahead and try this API, and you can see that there's several different options here. The one that we're interested in right now is sheets.spreadsheets.values.get. Why? Because we are getting values from the spreadsheet. So pretty intuitive there. So we're going to click on that, and then remember the spreadsheet ID that you just copied. You want to paste that right here. The range that we're going to use, we're just going to do sheet 1. This is an A1 notation, so you can do whatever range you want, but sheet 1 is going to capture all of the data on that particular sheet. So it'll allow it to be dynamic. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is the value render option. So value render, let's do formatted value. And then just authorize and execute. This screen will pop up, which will allow you to select what types of permissions you want to allow. So if you look through this, the only one that really applies here is this one right here, spreadsheets.read-only, because all we're doing is reading a spreadsheet. You don't really want to give it permissions, additional permissions, if you don't need it. So you're not in Drive, you're not in Drive here, you're not creating files, doing anything like that, and you're not putting information into the spreadsheet. All you're doing is reading from a spreadsheet. So go ahead and just leave that one as the only one selected. Click Authorize and Execute. What happens is it's going to tell you to select an account. So you're going to select the account that you're interested in, and then Allow. And then down here, if you look below, you'll see that this is a JSON syntax of the information in my sheet. So date, name, phone was the top row, and then you've got your different values here that I had input already. So it's telling me my range is sheet 1, A1 to Z1000. It only pulls the actual rows that have data. And 200 is showing that it was a successful call. So that is it for this episode. What we've done, just to recap really quick, is over in this tab, we set up a new project. From setting up the new project, we created a client key, read data. We also looked at the API key, copied that off to the side, and we restricted that key. From there, we went over to the Google API's Explorer. We put the sheet ID from our spreadsheet into it and selected a range and then spit out all this information. So this is really the initial setup that you need for pretty much any project, is to test to make sure you're pulling properly and to get the proper credentials set up. In the next episode, we're going to go ahead and go over how to use these keys and this sheet to actually put it into some code and display it from the web page itself. So feel free to subscribe and put a comment below with any questions or comments, and that is all. Thanks. Bye.